Hey everyone, back again. Another segment of Michigan Conservative Roundtable. Mac, my name is TJ, and this one's going to be a little bit different type of segment. It's going to be a little bit of everything maybe. A little bit of history, a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of personal experience, a little bit of sadness, and a little bit of a gun video. And not sure how well it's visible, but what we have here is a Ted Williams Model 300 12 gauge gas operated semi-automatic shotgun. And why did I bring this? Well, I'm going to tell you about a business venture which has since been referred to as the retail apocalypse, and that is the horrible decline of Sears. Some weeks ago, my wife and I went to a Sears that was closing, going out of business, had a banner across the whole front of the store. And as my wife and I walked through the store, we both experienced a sense of sadness to look at what has happened to Sears. Just a personal sadness, and you know, in talking to my wife, I said, you know, Sears was the first place I purchased my first firearm, this shotgun right here, October 1977. This shotgun is about 43 years old. And you want to know something? It gets mixed reviews, not really worth a lot of money from what my research tells me. And if you don't like Winchesters, because this particular model was made by Winchester, it's after the Winchester model 1400. So if you're not favorable toward Winchester 1400, then you're gonna poo-poo this one too. It's got a built-in plug, so this only takes 3 shots. And you know, as I think about the decline of Sears, you know, how it saddened me, and then it goes back to that was the place I bought my very first firearm once I turned 18. Thoughts so far, Matt?
Well, as we get older, we see more and more of this. You know, I could drive by Michigan and Trumbull and No More Tiger Stadium. There's a nice ballpark there for kids. And I'll give a plug to my former employer, Adient, who did a nice job putting something useful on that site rather than a place for women to get raped and so on and so forth. But Ted Williams, the last man to hit 400 in the major leagues, was an avid outdoorsman, huge fisherman, huge hunter. And that's how his name ended up on this, I'm sure.
Which I wasn't aware of. I would just want to do a very brief history on Sears itself, the rise and fall of what was once the largest, most powerful retailer in the world. In 1886, a man by the name of Richard Sears had a watch company. And a couple years after that, he went into business with a guy with the last name of Roebuck. And their specialty was watches and repairs. And the company name was Sears, Roebuck and Company. In 1895, they kind of converted into a catalog type of company. Basically, what they wanted to do was they wanted to specialize in selling to the rural customers. They felt like farmers and those in the outlying areas, flyover country, though I don't know how much flying was happening back then. But anyways, what they wanted to do was they wanted to, that was their customer base, was the rural people. The guys who, they were nowhere near a store, but they had a catalog, and they'd get the catalog and they'd make an order, and upon delivery they would inspect the delivery and then pay for it. And that's how it really kind of all started off.
A lot of that was done through your general stores in your rural areas.
Yep. 1906, according to CNBC, Goldman Sachs handled the first IPO of Sears. It traded at $97.50.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought wow too.
Yeah, that's a lot of money back then.
They did take a hit at the end of World War I. because as you know, when the Depression era set in, that did affect Sears, Roebuck and Company. And at that time, they had their CEO, a guy by the name of Rosenwald. He put in $21 million of his own wealth to save the company, and he was successful. He was able to turn it around. In 1925, they opened up their first store in Chicago. By 1945, they had $1 billion in sales, and if you take into account by today's standards, that would be the equivalent of $13 billion in today's market. Okay, Sears, and I didn't realize this, but Sears was the first to cater to both men and women as far as fashion, household goods, appliances. They even sold automobiles. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
They had their own. They had their own automobile, and in 1951, they released a new mail order automobile. And from the years of 1952 to 1954, in Willow Run, Michigan, here in Michigan, we're from Michigan, and in Toledo, Ohio, they made what was called the Allstate. I think it was they called the Allstate 52, but the Allstate automobile was a Sears vehicle.
Well, I know that Allstate Insurance was a staple in their stores.
Exactly.
I remember that from when I was a kid.
Yep. In 1969, they broke ground for the Sears Tower in Chicago. It was completed in 1973. It cost Sears $110 million to build, which is peanut today.
Yeah.
And at that time, for 20 years, it would hold the title of tallest building in the world.
I've been in that building, and it is frighteningly big.
Let's see. From World War II into the 1970s, Sears enjoyed basically being king of the hill, the all-time high. Also in the 70s and into the 80s, shopping malls would be built. And if anyone who's familiar, you have these malls, they're all under one roof with all these stores and everything. And Sears would become one of the main anchor stalls of these malls that would be built. However, now we're going to get to the sad part of this story. In 1990, Sears lost its spot to Walmart as the biggest retailer. And from that point, Walmart seemed to be king of the hill, and Sears just struggled from that point on. Walmart, for instance, Walmart sales rose to $32.6 billion, up 26%, compared to Sears, whose sales only rose 1.2%. But even at only raising their sales 1.2%, they still had a total sale of $31.9 billion. So Walmart, with their 26% increase, edged out Sears at that point. In 1993, they discontinued their catalog. And I do recall in elementary school, my mom was an avid purchaser of the catalog thing. We'd get these catalogs delivered to our house, and she'd call in her order. And then when she was informed that her order was in, we'd go to the Sears store, which was about a mile away, stand in line and pick up our delivery. In the early 2000s, Kmart had purchased Sears, and in that time frame, Kmart had even exceeded Sears. So then it went from Walmart being number one to Kmart number two, then Sears number three. Kmart thought in purchasing Sears they could overcome Walmart, who was number one on top. It didn't work though, unfortunately. And in 2007, their shares did go for $195.18, but then by 2015, their revenue began to fall, and they went into a slide that they just couldn't turn around. And to give you an idea just how catastrophic this decline was, in 2010, Sears had more than 3,500 stores. As of today, this month, February, they are down to 187 stores nationwide. So they went from 3,500 to 187.
Little fun fact about Kmart. I know at one point, I can't cite the year, but at one point, Kmart, 1 out of every 2 people in this country shopped at a Kmart at least once a month.
Yeah. We had a Kmart a half mile from my house. The Sears was a mile away in the one direction, and in the other direction, Kmart was about a half mile. And, depending on what we needed or what we wanted, either Kmart or Sears. And then I recall when Kmart bought Sears, and that seemed kind of odd to me. You know what? When Kmart bought Sears, it didn't sound good for either one.
No.
It worked for a couple of years, and then it didn't work any longer.
Well, you had Sears prices in Kmart stores is why I think that failed.
Yeah. Currently, their last CEO, guy by the name of Lampert, there's legal wranglings going on. He was a hedge fund guy, and accusations of using Kmart and Sears to keep his hedge fund efforts afloat. So things aren't quite through yet, but I got to tell you, it saddens me to say this, but I just don't know how much longer Sears and Kmart will even be in existence, around, or whatever.
Kmart is almost gone.
And like I said, when I think of the decline of Sears, and I'm going to pick this up again, boy, I'll tell you what, the very first firearm I ever bought, I ever owned, I ever shot, this one here, I bought at Sears in November of 1977. And I look at this and I think of the sad story of what has happened to Sears now. And it just saddens me. Any final thoughts, Matt?
It's in both Kmart and Sears, they didn't change with the times quick enough, and they almost, at least in Kmart's position, they turned on their customer base. They forgot what the customers loved about their store and tried to get new customers. And we've seen examples of this, like
under their old way of doing things.
And with Bill Knapp's,
they did not keep up on online sales. Internet purchasing was the final straw that really did them in, I believe.
Well, Amazon became the number one. They even knocked out Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart was the gut punch, and the internet sales finished them off.
Amazon is essentially an online catalog store.
Yes.
So they got beat at their own game.
Yep. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, a little bit of history, a little bit of gun, and let us know what you thought. And we will end with, be safe, watch your six, and don't tread on me.